Every piece of wood in your house that looks dead, gray, cracked, or faded, there's a liquid that fixes all of it, and it costs $2. Not a stain, not a sealer, not a temporary color coat that peels in a season. Something that absorbs into the wood itself, feeds it at the fiber level, and brings it back in a way that makes people ask if you replace the boards entirely. $2. Hardware store. And the reason you've never heard about it isn't complicated. It's just that the people who sell you the expensive stuff would really prefer you didn't. Walk into any home improvement store and count the wood products: restorers, conditioners, sealers, toners, UV protectants, penetrating oils, each one solving a slightly different problem, each one requiring reapplication every 6 months to 3 years, each one priced between $15 and $60 a can. That's a deliberate architecture. The market for wood care products in the US alone runs north of $4 billion a year, not because wood is complicated, because the companies that dominate that shelf space long ago figured out that one product solving everything permanently is a business model you can only sell once, and once isn't enough. The shift happened gradually, starting in the late 1950s and accelerating through the 60s. Before that, the standard approach to wood protection, in furniture making and boat building and agricultural applications, relied on a small set of natural penetrating compounds that had been refined over generations. The synthetics that replaced them weren't better at protecting wood. The documentation on this is not subtle. Industrial studies from the 1970s, comparing the long-term moisture resistance of traditional penetrating oil treatments versus the new polymer-based coatings, showed the polymer coatings cracking and lifting within 18 to 24 months in outdoor conditions. The old methods held. The industry shifted anyway, because a product that degrades is a product that gets repurchased. Here's the part that actually matters for your deck, your fence posts, your outdoor furniture, your interior trim that's gone chalky and gray. Wood doesn't age the way people think it does. Most people assume weathered wood has lost something structural, that it's weakened or become porous, in a way that's hard to reverse. What's actually happened is simpler. The natural oils and resins in wood, the compounds that give it flexibility, water resistance, and that warm depth of color, migrate to the surface and evaporate over time. Sunlight accelerates this, rain pulls it out. Temperature cycling drives it deeper and then pushes it out. What you're left with is structurally sound wood that has simply been depleted of the compounds that made it look and perform the way new wood does. Modern surface treatments respond to this by laying something on top. A film, a coating, a shell. The wood underneath stays depleted. When the coating wears through, which it will, the wood underneath looks exactly as bad as before, sometimes worse, because the coating trapped moisture against it. This is why the reapplication cycle exists. It's not that the treatments fail dramatically. They just don't actually fix the underlying condition. What the old craftsmen understood, furniture makers in the early 1900s, boat builders working in maritime traditions that go back centuries, the agricultural workers who kept wooden fence posts standing in wet ground for 40 years, is that the solution to depleted wood is to replenish what it lost, not cover it, replenish it. And the compound that does this better than anything that came before or after it is something called boiled linseed oil. Before you click away thinking you've heard this before, stay with me, because what most people know about boiled linseed oil is a partial story that misses the actual mechanism, and more importantly, misses the application method that makes the difference between mediocre results and results that last decades. Boiled linseed oil is pressed from flax seeds and then heat processed to alter its polymerization behavior. Raw linseed oil exists too, and it works, but it takes weeks to cure and can attract mold in the process. The boiled version, which despite the name is typically processed with metal drying agents rather than literal boiling, cures in 24 to 48 hours and polymerizes into a flexible, water-resistant solid inside the wood fiber itself. Not on top of it, inside it. The molecules are small enough to penetrate the cellular structure of the wood, and when they cure, they fill the spaces left by the evaporated natural resins. The wood doesn't just look better, it behaves like wood with full moisture content again. Dimensional stability improves, cracking and splitting slow dramatically, and the surface takes on that depth of color that no surface coating can replicate, because no surface coating is doing what this is doing. There is one critical application detail that separates good results from transformative ones, and it's the thing most online guides gloss over. The oil needs to go on thin, not a heavy coat that sits on the surface. Thin, almost like you're wiping it on. Multiple passes, each one allowed to partially absorb before the next. The goal is saturation, not coating. If you can see a wet sheen on the surface after 10 minutes, you've applied too much and need to wipe the excess off. Excess oil on the surface does cure, but it cures as a film rather than as a penetrant, and that film will eventually peel. The excess wipe step is non-negotiable. What you'll need is simple: boiled linseed oil, Look for BLO on the label. Hardware stores stock it in quart and gallon cans, and for most projects, you'll use far less than a quart. The price runs between $8 and $12 a quart, which covers roughly 100 to 150 square feet of surface, depending on how depleted the wood is. The first application on very weathered wood gets absorbed almost instantly. You'll watch it disappear into the grain in real time. That's the depletion feeding. Subsequent applications absorb more slowly as the wood approaches saturation. For badly weathered exterior wood, a fence that's gone silver gray, deck boards that have that dry, splintery texture, do a light sand first, not to remove material, just to open the grain. 80 or 100 grit with the grain to clear away the top layer of oxidized fiber that would otherwise block absorption. Wipe off the dust, then apply the first coat on a warm day, ideally when temperatures are between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Warmer wood absorbs better. Work in sections, brushing or wiping the oil on, watching it pull into the grain. Wipe away any excess pooling in low spots or end grain. Let it cure for 24 hours. The second application, done the following day, absorbs more slowly. You're getting closer to saturation. Watch the surface. When the wood starts holding the oil rather than pulling it in immediately, you're close to done. 2 coats handles most moderately weathered wood. 3 coats for severely depleted surfaces. For interior wood, furniture, trim, cabinets that have gone dull and lifeless, the same process applies, but you'll reach saturation faster because interior wood isn't as depleted and you're not fighting UV damage. The smell during application is faintly nutty, almost pleasant. It dissipates completely within a few days of cure. Standard ventilation for any oil-based product applies. Don't work in an enclosed space with no airflow. One more thing that matters. Rags used with linseed oil can spontaneously combust as they cure and generate heat. Spread used rags flat to dry outdoors or submerge them in water before disposal. This is a real consideration, not a disclaimer for appearances. 3 weeks after the first application, the wood doesn't just look restored, it responds differently to touch. The surface has a warm, almost waxy smoothness. Water beads on it the way it beads on a well-conditioned leather surface. When you press your thumbnail into a treated board versus an untreated one, the treated one has a subtle give to it, a resilience that depleted wood doesn't have. That's the fiber structure behaving the way it's supposed to when it has adequate oil content. The longevity of this treatment in outdoor conditions is a function of sun exposure and moisture cycling. In harsh, full sun environments, plan to reapply every 3 to 5 years. In covered outdoor conditions or interior applications, a single treatment can hold for a decade or more. Compare that to the every 6 months reapplication schedule on most commercial deck products. The math runs in one direction. A gallon of boiled linseed oil runs roughly $25 to $30 and treats 400 to 600 square feet. A single can of branded wood restorer from the hardware store shelf runs $35 to $60 and covers a fraction of that area, requires annual or biannual reapplication, and addresses the symptom rather than the underlying depletion. The professional deck restoration service that your neighbor paid $800 for last spring used a penetrating oil as the base treatment. They may or may not have told you that. The craftsmen who built furniture meant to last 200 years weren't working with better wood. They were working with better knowledge. Linseed oil treatment appears in furniture-making manuals from the 18th century. It's in boat building guides from the 1880s. It's in the agricultural extension bulletins that county farmers relied on through the first half of the 20th century. The knowledge didn't disappear because something better came along. It faded out of common use because it was replaced in the retail environment by products that required repurchase. Those are different things, and it matters that you understand the difference. If you've got wood in your life that you've been managing with expensive products that keep failing, or wood you've written off as too far gone to save, try 1 quart of boiled linseed oil before you do anything else. Apply it the right way. Thin coats, excess wiped away. Patience between applications. The results will show up in the first treatment and compound with subsequent ones. The wood you thought needed replacing probably just needs feeding. If this kind of recovered knowledge is useful to you, there's more in this channel. The pattern repeats across categories. Products that work replaced by products that require repurchase, with the original solution still sitting in old manuals and trade guides waiting to be found again. Subscribe if you want to catch the next one. And if you've used linseed oil on a project and have results to share, or a wood problem you haven't been able to solve with the commercial options, drop it in the comments. I read them, and the specific cases people bring up often turn into the next investigation.